Hello everyone, this is just going to be a tutorial about fog. So I'll do the cheap, cheesy way, or that's not cheesy, it does the job. It'll fill the whole scene with fog, super speed way to do fog, and then I'll show the more complicated way where you could be more specific about your fog. So all the fog will be in one video. Let's go! So, cheap way, not cheap. This one probably actually costs your computer more life. But the super easy way to do fog would be going into our world properties, going under volume, and then popping in either that principled volume or the volume scatter. The principled volume is going to have more option. The volume scatter is only going to have like essentials. So if you want to put color, you can put some color. For some reason, I don't know why this happens. The volume scatter color goes like the complementary of what you pick. But if you chose the principled volume, it will go the color you picked. So keep that in mind when you're choosing the color. I actually have no idea why that happens. I'm sure it has something to do with how fog works. But we also have density, so we can make it some less dense or more dense of fog. And again, you can also do the principled volume instead. And this one should turn purple if I change it to purple. And then we have some fog. So super quick way to just put fog everywhere. You can play around with these. You could put emission on it. I'll cover these in the more specific fog. But there are a few more settings in that principled volume one. So this is a super quick way to do it. If you want to take it off, click on it again. You can hit remove, or you can change which kind of volume you chose. So I'm just going to take it off. So more complicated way to do volume is going to be kind of similar to how we did our particles, where we filled the space with like the Dusty Boys. So we're going to make something that's going to designate the space we want to fill up. So you don't have to fill up your whole space. If you just want like the top of a spooky swamp to like be emitting fog, you could only have that have fog coming up. If you want like a foggy jar, because you have like mysterious liquids in your scene, you could do that. I'm just going to fill up the whole space with fog though. So I'm going to make a cube. Make it a large cube. Fill up that space. So you specify everything inside of this cube is going to like be at risk for fog. That's not how I wanted to say that. But it's fine. I don't know how long I've been working in 3D, but I still think Y is up. I forget Z exists. Okay, so now we have the inside of this space blacked off because it's cubed in. Let me actually raise this up a little bit more. And I'm gonna, no, I should keep that. I want to make this foggy. So I'm going to actually put a material on my cube. So go to my material properties, plus new. I'm going to change it right away from a principled BSDF to that principled volume. And you won't see anything happen. You might possibly, I think it turns black. Or it'll crash. Oh, it's black. Okay. So the issue here is it's still trying to apply it as it would a usual shader, what's going on the surfaces, the faces. We want it to apply to the volume, the insides. So let's open up our node editor. Sorry, I just did the lighting tutorial. Gotta fix some stuff. So we have, you can see in our node editor, our principled volume hooked up to the surface. we want it to be hooked up to the volume. And once you do that, if you're in the render preview, I think in Cycles it still looks smoky. It's just like creepy smoky. So this is, I'm doing it in Cycles right now. I probably should point that out in my past tutorials, but I'm just usually in Cycles. I'm sorry to those whose laptops can't handle just working in Cycles though. So you can see we have a foggy square now. We can go in, open up the volume now, so it's not under surface, so you have to look under volume. But again, we could play with color. We can play with the density if we just want to change the overall density, but we're going to be more specific about density in a bit. Two other areas you might want to play around with would be how light is absorbed or passes through it, and the emission. So the anisotropy, you can see if we slide that right or left, it's going to determine like how far the light rays can go in. So it's going to be lighter or darker. So more specific control, you might want to be playing around with that. And then emission, I actually found works really nice. So usually emission, my go-to is like 1 for anything, but this is going to be way too intense. Now it's like magic fog, which maybe that's what you wanted. But if you do like the smallest bit of emission possible, it'll give you that's too small. A nice like spookier vibe to it, like so that light isn't affecting it, but it has like a glowy fog style to it. So you might want to play around with emission. You might not have thought to do emission, but I really like the effect it has on the fog. But for now, we will keep it at 0, and we're going to focus on density. So say rather than just like a block of fog, you want it to be like chunky, broken apart, wispy fog, or you want the kind of fog where it's like clustered towards the ground and then it kind of like fades away. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So back to my shading menu. And actually, I'm going to change this bottom left window to be my render preview. So I have a very small render preview. So this is hard mode because it's going to be using all the like node editor stuff. So it's going to be hooking up a bunch of nodes. And really, like with any material, you can go as hard as you want with hooking up all these nodes to fine tune everything and say how you want it affecting the shader and all of that. But we'll try to just do like 2 possible options. We won't go too deep in. So first, let's just make the chunky fog, wispy fog. For that, I'm just going to bring in one of those textures, the generic textures. They're the like black-white bump maps. You could play around, pick different ones. I've found the Musgrave works really well. But depending on like what kind of wispiness you want, you might want to play around and see how the different ones work. And I'm just going to hook up that gray dot to the density gray dot. And you can see right away that in my render, if you can see this even, oh, well, my face is blocking it anyway, so it doesn't matter. The main thing is looking at this big thing. Just look at my face in the corner. Actually, maybe it'll be helpful. Fine. We'll go up here. So now you can see it has some wispies. We could play around with scale, detail, all the settings to change up how the map is scaled and defined. But you can see, rather than that homogeneous fog, we now have like floating chunks of fog. We could do magic, icy fog. So option 1, that one's pretty easy. It's easy in terms of hooking up the map. It's gonna be a little difficult to like play around with the actual scale that you want everything to be at of the map. Some of the textures, if you drag them in, the like default that they're at won't look like it's doing anything, so it's really going to take like finagling with the sliders. So keep that in mind. Also, the scale you have stuff at might depend or impact how that map works. So that's the texture. I'm just going to unhook it for now. Now I'm going to do the like fade away fog. So for that, I'm going to use a color ramp, which I think is under converter. Again, you can always type these in to find them. So color ramp. I'm going to hook up the color to the density. And right away, I will not have any clue of what's going on. It kind of looks like it's doing something. And you can see playing around with the sliders makes it do something. I think it's kind of like making a pyramid in the middle of like where the fog is the strongest. I'm not too sure. But to understand what it's doing, I'm going to put a mapping vector in. So we want to tell it to like be smoky on the bottom and fade away as it rises. So we want that mapping node, and again hook it up with the texture coordinate one. We're going to be doing generated to vector, and then vector to factoid. And now we still don't see anything, but now if I play around with these sliders, I should see a bit of direction happening. So it looks like all of the fog is trying to gather in this back left corner. And I want it to either, I'm probably going to make it gather on the ceiling and then swap my color ramp because I have more luck doing that just from doing this a few times. But I want to make it gather on one of these walls, and then I could just rotate it or swap the color ramp if I need. So I need to make this come a little bit more to the right. Can I work with this? So you can work with this in cycles if your computer cannot handle doing this like constant change in rendering. This might actually be more visible of what's happening too. So you can see if I slide this left, it's growing more on that left wall. If I slide it right, it's shrinking. Wow, actually maybe I'll work in cycles. And then I could play around with that y-axis as well. Oh my god, can I get it on the floor? Oh my god, I can't see it. Come back, fog. What have I done? So this is where all the finagling is going to happen. Is slide stuff until you get it to slide the way you want it to slide. Okay, so with a bit of sliding, now you can see I have it mostly gathered on the roof part of this box. So it's thickest fog at the top, and then it fades to nothing, and I can play around with that like gradient with my color ramp. You can also switch the blending method, so ease is usually nice, a nice blend. But the thing I want is for it to be thick on the floor, so I'm just going to swap places with these sliders. So now it's thick on the floor and it fades to the top. So you can see now it's darker on the floor down here, fades up. And this will give you that like rising fog effect. I'd probably want to play around with my emission, but if this is too dense of fog or not dense enough of fog and it's too difficult to play around with the color ramp anymore, you can put in a math node to either make it stronger or make it weaker. So I'm just going to pop that in to show that that is a thing. This is where we can like go really hard into specifying stuff, but so we want math, converter math. So I want to divide it technically, but if anytime you're doing like multiply, add, divide, you want to just find that math node, and then you can designate within that drop down what type of math you want. So I'm going to divide it, and you can see if I bump that up, it's actually making the fog weaker. If I do a fraction, it should make it stronger, but you can also do a multiply node if you want, or a multiply math, well, whatever. So that'll give you a little bit more toggle control over that density. I also want to show that we can combine some effects. So say I want the rising fog mixed in with the chunky fog. I want them two at the same time. Rather than having to do like two different squares, I can mix RGB. There's a mix shader and a mix RGB. Mix shader is specifically for mixing two shaders. So the shader is this like green node over here, the principled volume. So it'd be like mixing two defined shaders, so like a paint shader and a metal shader. You could mix them to make it look like paint's chipping off a metal or something. So we want the mix RGB, which I have no, oh here it is, it's under color. I'm very bad at I Spy. So we can hook these up to the mix into those color 1 and color 2. What? And the slider here is saying how much of each it's mixing. So this is 50-50, but if I slide it to the left, you can see it's all the color ramp. If I slide it to the right, it's all of the chunk. I could also technically put some kind of texture into this slider to define how it's mixing them. So that's how you'd make like paint chipping, is I'd probably put in this like Musgrave texture and it'd determine that as like what is mixed where. But that's too complicated. So we can just slide it, and now you can see we have some fog rising, and we also have some wispy fog in the scene. So this is complicated fog. We do have that more, this probably will actually be less stressful on the render than the easy fog, just because that's filling the whole space. They're both going to require some little finagling with your render settings. The denoiser doesn't handle fog very well. It tries to like smooth out the fog and does like a very bad job. So you're probably going to want to bump up your diffuse samples a couple times. So this will increase render time, but it will do some really cool effects with your lights and your atmosphere. So that's it for fog.